Everyone, welcome to the show. I have updates to share about Donald Trump's New York hush money trial, his election interference trial. So his former fixer, his attorney, former attorney, was back on the stand today. Again, Michael Cohen. He continued with his cross-examination, and the prosecutor then did their redirect. So under cross-examination, the defense got Cohen to admit he stole money from the Trump organization, $30,000. This came up when Trump's attorney was asking Cohen about a $50,000 payment that the Trump organization issued to a company called Redfinch. Now, you might remember this came up earlier in the trial. Redfinch conducted these bogus polls for Trump to try to make it look like everyone wanted him to run for president. Everyone just loved Trump. So then Cohen went out and he used those polls to sway public opinion, right? Because everybody wants to get on board with something that's somebody or someone, something that's winning. So anyway, Redfinch apparently charged $20,000 for their work, but Cohen submitted a $50,000 invoice. So he gave Redfinch $20,000 in cash. Cohen said that he literally carried it to them in a brown paper bag, and then Cohen pocketed the other $30,000. So that was a hit to Cohen's credibility, especially because the prosecutors obviously trying to convince the jury Cohen did all of this, the hush money payoff, all the lies. They're trying to convince the jury he did all of that to protect Donald Trump. That, that was his guy, that was his savior. So they need the jury to believe Cohen didn't make any moves without Trump, any moves without his prior approval or his knowledge. So that was a little bit damaging, but it kind of cuts both ways because you have the defense trying to paint Cohen as this, almost like a Moonie, like a cult member who was so obsessed with Trump that he just did this on his own. And, he just wanted to please Trump. And he was so upset that he didn't go to the White House with him that's why he got angry. So this kind of shows he's not as much of a groupie, not as much of a cult member as you're painting him to be. So we'll see. But during the redirect, Cohen explained to the jury, not that it's an excuse, but he said, yeah, I kept the Redfinch money because I was pissed about my bonus. He had previously said Trump cut his bonus that year by 2/3, and he was really upset about it. Then the defense also tried to show that Cohen did, in fact, do a lot of legal work for Trump and his family in 2017, because remember, Cohen had said he did little, if any, work for Trump that year, but he was receiving that $35,000 a month under that bogus retainer agreement. So the defense is trying to say, no, it actually was for legal services. It wasn't repayment of this hush money. And so they went through also a list of other clients that Cohen had been working with that year, trying to show this wasn't abnormal, right? This wasn't an abnormally large amount of money for very little work. And to be fair, he was paid an obscene amount of money for how little work he did for these companies. So for example, AT&T, and Cohen confirmed this, AT&T paid him over $1 million, and he admitted he had only 6 communications with them or on their behalf. So definitely seems like they may have been paying for his access to Trump more than actual legal services. But in any case, it felt from the live news coverage, at least, that during his cross-examination, Trump's attorney, once again, which was Todd Blanche, he was just playing whack-a-mole, just like he did last week. Seems like last year. I understand his job is to undermine Cohen's credibility, but it sounds like he was just jumping again from one topic to the next, and there were somewhat unrelated themes and topics. Now, it's possible it sounds better in the court. It's more cohesive, the story that he's trying to paint in court. But on-site reporters that are feeding information out to news outlets, they're saying it doesn't seem to be landing much with some members of the jury because they seem kind of restless and bored. They were saying some juries were resting their heads in their hands. They were distracted. Some of them were watching as people were coming in and out of the courtroom. So they weren't riveted by this testimony and this cross-examination like they were last week. So anyway, the prosecutor did a good job knocking down some of the issues brought up by Trump's team. Then they took a break. They took their lunch break, and then there was a bit of an argument when they returned to the courtroom. It centered around Cohen's alleged October 2016 phone conversation that he said he had with Trump regarding Stormy Daniels. So you might remember this from last week. Trump's attorney argued Cohen never spoke to Trump. He said, isn't it true you spoke with Trump's bodyguard, Keith Schiller? He called you right after you sent him this text about these harassing phone calls you were getting from a teenager. So the prosecutor showed a still photo of Trump at one of his rallies that night, right before this call went through. And he was standing right next to his bodyguard, Keith Schiller. So they're obviously making the point that Schiller could have easily handed the phone to Trump. And, they're saying, oh, it was only a 90-second call. Well, I suggest that everyone pause this and set a timer, and you can see how long 90 seconds is. It's an awfully long time. You can cover a lot of ground. After that, the prosecution rested their case. Trump attorney Todd Blanche tried to do the redirect of the redirect, but kind of like he did last week as well, he appeared to make the prosecutor's case for them. I honestly don't know what this guy is thinking, but Blanche asked Cohen a couple of questions about whether or not Trump was someone who regularly overpaid for things. So, of course, Cohen said no, because Trump is infamous for being a cheapskate. So I don't know what's going through Blanche's mind. I have to wonder, does he keep forgetting which side he's playing for? He used to be a prosecutor, so I don't know. Maybe he's brain fading, but that just seemed like he nailed the prosecutor's point about, Trump wouldn't be paying Cohen $35,000 a month for doing barely any legal work when he is such a cheapskate, when he absolutely will not pay legitimate bills. So anyway, the defense then called some witnesses today. It did not go well. They called a paralegal from Blanche's office. That person was just there to authenticate phone logs showing calls between Michael Cohen and then this second witness they called, which was Robert Costello. Now, you might remember that name. It came up over the past few weeks. Costello is an attorney. He is a very good friend of Rudy Giuliani. That tells you everything you need to know. And he was suggested to Cohen as, hey, you might want to retain him as your attorney. And then he was acting as a back channel between Trump and Cohen. That was after Cohen's home was raided, after he was hit with a federal indictment. So Costello was called to the stand. He told the jury that Cohen made numerous statements to him saying Trump knew nothing about these Stormy Daniel payments or the payment. So the prosecutor objected to a bunch of the defense questions because they were kind of leading questions. And according to live reporting, it probably frustrated Costello, or it definitely frustrated Costello, I should say, because he kind of blew up. He was bitching and complaining under his breath, but loud enough for the judge to hear. He got really frustrated at one point and said, strike that from the record, as he's a witness on the stand. And so, it just got really spicy. So the judge ordered the jury to step out of the room, step out of the courtroom, and then he totally slammed Costello. So Judge Merchan told Costello, quote, "I'd like to discuss proper decorum in my courtroom. You don't give me side eye and you don't roll your eyes. And journalists reported that the judge ordered Costello to be quiet numerous times, and then he told him to sit down. And he asked Costello, quote, "Are you staring me down?" Oh, not scoring points. And that is going to affect the jury. I mean, they see that. They see how he's getting all aggro and being rude and, dismissive of the judge and trying to act like the judge in the judge's courtroom. I mean, it just can't play well with the jury. But they came back in. On-site reporters say that Costello looked, quote, embarrassed and angry. And then the court concluded sometime after that, but Costello will be back on the stand tomorrow for cross-examination, so we'll see how that goes. Then, of course, we have no court on Wednesday, but the judge will then be back in court on Thursday. I don't know how much reporting we're going to get on that because he's going to be meeting with both sides to discuss jury instructions. The closing arguments, though, he determined, are not going to take place until next Tuesday. So the judge decided he wanted to wait until after the holiday weekend to do the closing arguments and then for the jury to go into deliberation. And a couple of legal experts I heard explained a couple of things. They said, number one, you don't want to send the jury into deliberation over a holiday weekend. Some of these people had plans. Some of them were going out of town. You don't want to have that issue or them trying to rush to get through a decision. Two, they said if something were to happen to one of the main jurors who heard the closing arguments, and then you start deliberation, you bring them back in next week, if something were to happen to one of the 12, for some reason, which I don't understand because I'm not an attorney, I'm not a judge, they wouldn't be able to seat an alternate to then go into deliberations. So apparently you have to have an alternate in place, I'm assuming, before closing arguments and before you get to deliberation. So that will all go down next week. It's looking like now we are not going to have a decision on this trial until sometime after next week, sometime after Memorial Day. So I will definitely keep you posted. I will let you know what happens tomorrow. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share, and subscribe to the channel. Please donate if you possibly can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.